Hello Africa and the rest of the world. Welcome to Continental Prime here on News Central Television. From Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, Sulaiman led the headlines for this hour. Southeasterners in Nigeria comply with a sit-at-home order by the proscribed indigenous group of Biafrans. Elections held in Somaliland today for the first time in over 15 years. An estimated 50 people have been killed following two separate attacks in the Democratic Republic of Congo's eastern region. Details shortly. We begin in Nigeria, where two people have been injured after an explosion rocked part of the popular Mile 3 market in Port Harcourt, the capital of the country's southeastern state of Rivers. The incident occurred around 6:30 in the morning on Monday. The police public relations officer in the state, Nnamdi Omoni, said a locally fabricated dynamite exploded after a woman opened her fish shop. The fish seller's son and another young lady were injured during the blast. The police say the two survivors are receiving medical attention and no life was lost in the incident. A full-scale investigation has been ordered to ascertain the cause of the explosion and bring the perpetrators to book. Now, staying in Nigeria, a sit-at-home order by the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra is in force in southeastern Nigeria. The group had issued the No Movement Directive to mark what it termed the celebration of Biafra Day, a reference to May 30, 1967, the day General Yakubu Gowon-led federal government declared war against the then Eastern Regional Government headed by the late Emeka Ojukwu. State governments in the region have kicked against the IBOB directive. Earlier, News Central spoke with Monday Ubani, former vice president of the Nigerian Bar Association, and barrister C.C. Chukwudi, a constitutional lawyer.
Is that our leaders are usually paying deaf ears to the yearnings of the masses. A good and intelligent administration would rather key in making this sacrosanct day a public holiday in Nigeria. It is one thing that will tell the people or send a message rather to the people that indeed they are being recognized, just like what my learned friend said. It sends a message to the people or to the government that indeed this is what is supposed to happen. This is what the government is supposed to do annually in order to give respect to the millions of lives that was lost during the Biafran Nigerian civil war between 1967 and 1970.
It's clearly a sign that the people, are at variance with the government. And I'm sure the government will not be very much happy with what has happened, that there is no economic activities in all the states of the eastern region. One would have thought, just like what Obiano did yesterday, that all the state governments should have observed 30th, or is it at the 1st of May, as a remembrance day of what happened during the 1960s, where many millions of Igbos were massacred and killed. And so that government observance wouldn't have interrupted economic activity. But this is clearly like a defiant stand that is being taken by the people, that if you fail to remember that date of what transpired, we want to remind you by way of force. And forcing government to remember what is historical, what cannot be forgotten, is leading now to clearly economic paralysis, in the entire southern eastern region. That it doesn't speak well for the government, and it's clearly a vote of no confidence.
While still on the security situation in Nigeria, women farmers in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, have called for an end to insecurity in the country, saying it is affecting their livelihoods. Now, they say they can no longer go to their farms for fear of being attacked. Our correspondent Amadi Uyi spoke to some of them and tells us more.
With over 34 million hectares of arable land, agriculture accounts for over 20% of Nigeria's GDP. Women play an important role in Nigeria's agricultural sector, constituting about 70 to 80% of the labor force. They produce the bulk of food for domestic consumption, as many of them are self-employed as farmhands, farm managers, suppliers of labor and other menial tasks. However, in recent times, as Nigeria's insecurity challenges continue to affect rural farming, many of these women are thus forced to abandon their farms.
Before, we go to farm without fear, but now we are scared to go alone for fear of attacks. Because they come from nowhere, kidnap you or your child, and sometimes go as far as killing the woman.
A trip to several rural communities around Nigeria's federal capital sees women farmers relive their experiences. Many of them say the criminal herdsmen and armed gangs now keep them away from the farms.
My own daughter was almost raped when she was coming back from our farm in Kuje. If not for God, she was mercilessly beaten and came back home naked. It was a good Samaritan that brought her home. Others ignore her, despite the fact that she was naked. The Fulani security problem is not only in Nigeria. We hear it is also in other countries. They enter your farm with their cows, despite your suffering, and eat up what you plant. You can't complain because they will kill you. You will be fortunate if you are more than one person. But if you are alone, they kill you if you complain. The issue of insecurity is very disturbing and has stopped us from going to farm out of fear.
Though Nigeria's security agencies and traditional rulers have consistently been informed on the current situation, it seems like they are powerless to stop the trend.
We report all the time, even to the local chiefs, but it seems it's too much for them. Whenever you report a Fulani man and he is fine, he comes back tomorrow to do worse than what he previously did. Most times, how can you catch them? They usually deny it is not them.
With 7 out of 10 farmers confirmed to be women in Nigeria, it is clear that if the insecurity situation is not addressed, and these women are not allowed to return back to their farms, Nigeria will be bracing up for a major food crisis. From Abuja, Amadin Uyi, News Central Television.
Now, February of 2023 is a year Nigerians in West Africa would go to the polls to elect. Nigerians in West Africa will go to the polls to elect their new leaders. Now, with a myriad of challenges bedeviling the electoral process in the country, there have been such a need to look into the 2022 to 2026 draft of the country's electoral umpire. That's the Independent National Electoral Commission. So the meeting held today in Lagos. Now, News Central's political correspondent Mary Chinde was there.
The validation of the INEC draft 2022 to 2026 is the reason for this third national retreat on strategic plan and strategic program of action, SPA.
There's a need to revisit that, do the needful to ensure that our communication is strengthened, to ensure that the necessary skills gaps are filled, to also identify the obstacles to effective performance of both departments at national level, state offices and local government offices. So all of that were captured in the organizational analysis we did. And we believe that if there's anything we missed out, you should be able to fill the gaps.
With the 2023 election less than 24 months away, INEC National Commissioner representing the National Chair explains that the Commission is bracing up for the elections with the increasing challenges across the country.
The COVID-19 pandemic has introduced a new dimension to the conduct of elections in Nigeria. And apart from that, we also have this issue of inclusion, right? The marginalized groups, their inclusion in the electoral process. And that is why we are changing the first objective to include inclusivity in the electoral process. And beyond that, we have also created a new department, 2 new departments, but one of them is of interest because it is dealing with gender and inclusivity.
Only recently, the Commission announced February 2023 as the month for Nigeria's general elections. Mary Chinda reporting for News Central TV.
Now, just like its counterpart in the military, the police in southwest of Nigeria would in no distant future get a secondary school of its own. The pledge was made by the Lagos State government after the Police Officers' Wives Association, led by its president, Hajara Alkali Baba, paid a courtesy visit to Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu. Correspondent Ijoma Esekalaye was a part of the entourage and also monitored the activities of the group in Lagos.
Continuation of the plan of the new leadership of the police to improve the general well-being of police personnel across board, the wife of the Inspector General of Police and Police Officers' Wives Association, POA, President Hajara Usman Alkali Baba, initiated a monthly health walk for wives of police officers.
This fitness we are trying to do is not for us to be slim. We don't need to be slim, but health-wise, we need the exercise. Health-wise, what do we need? We need exercise. Every woman should come out the first Saturday of the month. We are going to have it all over the whole federation.
The initiative was unveiled when she led the members of POA in Lagos State on a road walk from Alexander Road, Ikoyi, through to the Lekki-Ikoyi Link Bridge, Lagos State. After the walk, the POA executives led by President Hajara Alkali Baba also visited the governor of Lagos State, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and his wife at the Lagos House, Marina, where she made some demands.
I went round and I found out that Lagos State doesn't have a secondary school of police secondary school is not here. We don't have it here. I will please ask on behalf of myself and my women, POA, that our children, we need the secondary school here. So I would like the governor and his wife to help us to give us a space where we build our own secondary school.
Governor Sanwo-Olu pledged to ensure that the welfare of the police in the state is of topmost priority.
And the request or the requirement around a police secondary school, we will try and not just give you land. We'll give the land and we'll try and support you with building. For us in Lagos is home to all, right? Of what essence is the land if we don't have buildings on it? And our children, they don't know any divide.
Lagos State is here to encourage all the women. We know that quite a lot has happened last year, and quite a lot of our police officers are a bit demoralized. But to God be the glory, 2021 is a better year, and we're going to continue to lift each other up.
The visit of the president of POA to Lagos is the first official tour after her husband assumed office in April 2021.
Now we move to Central Africa, where at least 50 people have been killed in 2 new attacks in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, the Kivu Security Tracker, which monitors insecurity in the region, said at least 20 civilians were killed overnight in the village of Boga and at least 19 in the village of Chabi. Both villages are located in the Ituri province. People in the area blame the attacks on the ADF rebels. Now, the latest incidents come after 22 people last week were killed by the same rebel group in neighboring North Kivu province. Now, still in the region, the government of Chad has accused the Central African Republic of killing 6 of its soldiers and wounding 5 others in an attack in the south of the country. Chad's foreign minister, Cherif Mahamat Zene, said troops from the Central African Republic killed a soldier on Sunday morning in Suru. He said they kidnapped 5 others who were then killed close to the border. A senior Chadian security official told the French news agency that the soldiers were pursuing rebels. Now, the government in the capital, Bangui, often accuses Chad of trying to destabilize the country by supporting rebels. The President Evariste Ndayishimiye of Burundi is in Kenya for a 2-day visit. Now, the president's spokesperson said in a statement that the president's visit to Kenya is an opportunity to strengthen brotherhood relations between Burundians and Kenyans. Since winning the presidency in June 2020, Mr. Ndayishimiye has been keen to revive diplomatic relations after Burundi isolated itself from the May 2015, failed coup in the country. This is Mr. Ndayishimiye's 6th foreign visit in less than a year in power. His predecessor, the late Pierre Nkurunziza, only left Burundi once during his last term in office, when he went by road to neighboring Tanzania. Now, in the Horn of Africa, the self-declared Republic of Somaliland is holding parliamentary and municipal elections on Monday, some of which are overdue by 10 years. This is its 17th election since declaring independence from Somalia 30 years ago. A few women are contesting seats in the parliament, which currently has only 1 female member. The territory is not recognized internationally as a country, although it operates as a nation-state and is largely peaceful. Somalia, which insists that Somaliland is still a part of its territory, has not held a democratic poll for more than half a century. Now we'll move to the south of the continent, where reports from Zambia say police have started arresting members of the Resident Doctors Association after the leadership announced a strike on Friday. The Resident Doctors Association of Zambia is demanding the recruitment of 500 additional doctors and payment of salary arrears, among other issues. They're also demanding the creation of new positions for senior doctors who continue to receive salaries at junior doctors' levels. The association's president, Brian Samper, says his practicing license has been suspended following the announcement of the strike.
I want to inform the nation that things are now getting bad. Doctors are being arrested as we speak. As I'm talking to you right now, our Secretary General, Dr. Chikonde Mukula, has been arrested and detained at Ndola Central. This is unacceptable. This form of intimidation is getting too far. We've got calls coming from the police wanting to detain a number of doctors. Dr. Tsanga was called, another member of the executive. There is also another member who was called Dr. Tolopu. They have been calling people like Dr. Winnie and myself. Dr. Chikonde was just captured at ADH, Arthur Davidson Hospital, which is very bad. Please, all we are appealing is that these doctors be released with immediate effect. We don't need people to be arrested for speaking out, just wanting to air out their views and asking for what they are rightfully owed. We are not going to tolerate this, and the membership is very upset with this. They are not happy. We expect the government to respond and remove these doctors from the cells. They don't deserve to be in cells for just asking for arrears, setting allowances, and also for employment. These are things which they are owed. There is no way they can be arrested. So our demand is for these doctors to be released immediately. Thank you.
Brian Samper, president of the Resident Doctors Association in Zambia. In the meantime, the Zambian police chief, Kakoma Kangaja, has also warned Samper that he would be arrested if He continues addressing his members via Zoom meetings. Coming up, Egypt lifts restrictions put in place to prevent the spread of coronavirus. Details of this and more when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the Continental Prime here on News Central Television, reaching you live from Lagos, Nigeria's economic capital. Now, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa and his government are trying to navigate several political conundrums as the president moved the country to alert level 2 and extended the COVID-19 curfew. Now, business and alcohol lobby groups have argued that the country can't afford another hard lockdown. On the other hand, those in the medical arena say his government must act swiftly against a third wave. Joining me now to unpack some of the political considerations at play in South Africa is political analyst Sanusha Naidu. She's based with the Institute of Global Dialogue in Cape Town. Good to see you, Sanusha. You know, at the start of the lockdown period, more than a year ago, Ramaphosa's government seemed to have a lot of goodwill from civil society and opposition parties. Has that goodwill survived, and if not, why?
Good evening, Suleiman, and good evening to your viewers, and it's wonderful to be on your show. I think to answer your question bluntly, I think we have a number of different competing issues that are all kind of galvanizing at one time. The enthusiasm that you saw at the beginning of our COVID-19 crisis and the lockdown measures that were kind of a very hard lockdown, which was level 5, and it was very intense restrictions around curfew, movement, etc. I think people realized at the time, civil society, opposition parties, and general public kind of realized at the time that it was needed in terms of trying to ensure that we were able to, as a country, as a government, as a state, to address the growing numbers of infections, virus transmissions, and so forth, but also to try and give our healthcare system some breathing space to prepare themselves, as well as other institutions of the state to deal with how the pandemic was going to affect their rollout plans, their implementation plans. But unfortunately, we also had to deal with the fact that as we saw tenders come out as an emergency package for mask production, sanitizers, just the whole kind of state tenders, we saw the irregularities that seem to have been an undercurrent. So, you know, the whole contracts that the state was offering to address and mitigate the risks around the transmission, the virus, etc. We also saw the unconscionable acts of corruption. And that in itself has made people deepen mistrust of the state, deepened the lack of understanding, just a complete apathy towards the state as well. So which we saw yesterday when the president announced the level 2 lockdown, because we are at that stage where we are bordering a third wave in South Africa. I think what you are beginning to see is a combination of that mistrust, a combination of fatigue, being in lockdown mode constantly and wavering between different levels of regulation. And more importantly, I think there's an element of whether or not there's trust in the government as well.
Allow me jump in here, Sanusha, quickly here.
Sure.
Now you've gotten to that aspect of trust. Just recently, the president's government has been enmeshed in some scandal, also involving the health minister through friends and associates to tender irregularities. Now, did you think the president missed out last night on addressing some of these key issues?
Well, I think yesterday's address was a family meeting. We've been having these family meetings ever since the lockdown measures have been in place. We've had a 2-month kind of breather because we didn't have a family meeting. I don't think it was his intention to address it. He kind of intimated this prior to the meeting yesterday, the address to the nation, where he's waiting for the special investigative unit report into these allegations of the state the tender irregularity around a contract called Digital Vibes. And so that contract is being investigated, and he said once he gets the final report, he will deal with it. But in the court of public opinion, I think people feel he's missed an opportunity. He did come out this morning when in his weekly newsletter as the ANC president to say that there's a certain standard and behavior that ministers in government need to abide by. So he's kind of nuancing that in a way where he knows that people are coming out and saying he missed an opportunity. This is the time for action, particularly what's happening in the party as well with the step-aside rule.
Well, a good thing that, he comes across as a president that listens, so he went back to, addressing all of that. But some opposition parties like the DA have been critical of the government's vaccine plan. Are they doing well when it comes to communicating on this all-important matter?
I think the opposition parties feel that we are really behind the curve in terms of the rollout plan. They feel that there was a lack of coherence with the vaccination program. Even as yesterday, after listening to the president's announcement of more vaccines from Pfizer, and of course, the fact that the Johnson & Johnson vaccine had to go through certain FDA processes, and so that stalled our program as well. We had a problem with the AstraZeneca vaccine because of the vaccine was creating these kind of blood clots, etc. So all of that has come to a point where we are being compared with other African countries who are seen to be ahead of the vaccination process. And so we are basically being opposition parties, civil society, individuals in the science fraternity and across the board media are saying that South Africa is basically very slow out of the starting blocks. I'm not sure if it's a question of communication or if it's a question of planning and understanding what this vaccination process means, because we're now in the phase of vaccinating higher risk individuals in the age group of over 60 years and trying to also make sure that we complete the vaccination process for healthcare workers. But it's just slow.
Well, I think before I let you go, vaccine apartheid, those are keywords that you can always tie at any time to President Ramaphosa, accusing rich countries of, making it almost impossible for poorer countries to get the vaccine. Is that a valid concern or simply politics?
I think it is a valid concern if you consider that the head of the WHO today also spoke about vaccine racism in terms of whether or not people want to take a vaccine that's being produced in one of the developing countries like China or Russia. But I think vaccine nationalism is part of that question of vaccine apartheid. And it's a constant theme in President Ramaphosa's address. Even last night to the nation, he spoke about the fact that Africa needs to start producing its own vaccines. He said this even during the visit of French President Emmanuel Macron on Friday in the country where he was visiting for the first time in Southern Africa. And he said this very clearly and articulated in a very non kind of bipartisan way. He said, or partisan way, he said, Africa is independent, we can produce. We need to produce. You need to recognize that. So I think it's a constant theme in terms of how it leads from his AU chairpersonship, and of course what has been that whole process of increasing the African medical science, the Center for Disease Control, and of course the Center for Research and so forth on vaccine production, not just in terms of the pandemic, but also I think broadly in terms of the public health system in Africa.
Senator Naidu, many thanks for your time.
Pleasure.
Now, latest figures from the Africa Centers for Disease Control says the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases on the continent has reached 4.83 million on Monday. Now, the Africa CDC in a statement said the death toll from the pandemic exceeds 130,000, while over 4.36 million patients across the continent have recovered from the disease. The health agency notes that South Africa, Morocco, Tunisia, Ethiopia and Egypt are the countries with the most cases in the continent. It adds that Southern Africa is the most affected region on the continent, followed by the northern and eastern parts, while Central Africa is the least affected region. Now, the number of COVID-19 infections in Kenya drew closer to 171,000 on Monday after the health ministry reported 88 new cases. Now, the Health Ministry says 15 new virus-related deaths were registered in the same period, bringing the East African country's total number of fatalities to over 3,000. Now, the latest figures come a day after the Kenyan government imposed various restrictions, including a ban on public gatherings and the mandatory wearing of face mask as part of efforts to contain the pandemic. A nationwide nighttime curfew that has lasted more than 1 year was also extended on Sunday by 60 days. Now, in North Africa, authorities in Egypt have agreed to lift restrictions put in place to prevent the spread of coronavirus from Tuesday. Now, restaurants will be allowed to operate longer after the May 6 order directed them to close by 9 p.m. local time. Businesses in Egypt have summer and winter working hours with closure time ranging from 10 p.m. local time to midnight. The restrictions were imposed after a rise in coronavirus cases. With more than 260,000 virus cases, including more than 15,000 deaths, Egypt imposed strict measures at the start of the pandemic last year, but eased out slowly. Now, World No Tobacco Day is observed every year on May 31. Now, this day is set aside to inform the public on the dangers of using tobacco, the business practices of tobacco companies, and what the World Health Organization is doing to fight against the use of tobacco. News Central's Omolola Ololade has more.
Each year on May 31, member states of the World Health Organization celebrate World No Tobacco Day to draw global attention to the dangers of tobacco and the attendant preventable diseases and death. This year, the theme is Commit to Quit. The campaign is expected to help advocate for strong cessation policies, raise awareness of tobacco industry tactics, and empower tobacco users through Quit and Win initiatives. The importance of World No Tobacco Day cannot be undermined, as tobacco users are at a higher risk of contracting the COVID-19 virus.
Tobacco smoking has effect on immunity of the body generally. The immune system is lowered by tobacco smoking, and there is evidence that people with lower immunity, may have higher risk of having severe cases, having COVID-19 in the first place, or even severe cases of COVID-19. Also, because of the effect of tobacco smoking on the lungs and the respiratory system. So for those who are hospitalized for COVID-19, there is evidence that smokers tend to have more severe cases of COVID-19, and they are more likely to die from the pandemic.
Not only is tobacco a threat to users, it is also the cause of enormous respiratory diseases, particularly heart disease, hence the need to quit.
Apart from respiratory illnesses, smoking also causes heart diseases, risk for hypertension, heart failure, even heart attacks. Smoking increases the risk of strokes. Smoking increases the risk of kidney disease. We know that one of the most common causes of death, mortality, even in our environment in Nigeria, includes stroke, kidney disease, and heart attack, all under the umbrella of cardiovascular diseases. So I think rather than discussing duration of smoking that will lead to these illnesses, we should talk about prevention, because addiction is a very big deal. And so many people are already smoking, and having it's a lot of challenge for them to stop. And that's why I think emphasis should be on not starting at all. And that's why the campaign should go to secondary school, where they can catch them young, and people can be advised, and people must see the reasons why they must stop smoking at all.
Quitting tobacco can be difficult, but it is not impossible, and the benefits of quitting for one's health, relationships, and finances are immeasurable. Omolola Ololade, reporting for News Central.
Also ahead, a manhunt in France has ended after authorities shot the fugitive in the southwestern part of the country. More on this when we return. Now, an armed ex-soldier who's been on the run in southwestern France has been shot by police after a 24-hour manhunt. The man, named by police as 29-year-old Thierry Dupain, had fled to a forest after shooting at officers on Saturday, leading to a massive manhunt. Officials say Dupain was wounded during a shootout with a Special Forces squad and has been taken into custody. Interior Minister Gérald Darmanin said he had been neutralized and thanked police for their decisive action. Now, the World Health Organization has called for equitable access to vaccines, saying it is essential for ending the Covid-19 pandemic. WHO's Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus made the call today while giving reporters an update on the pandemic. The WHO boss warned that the pandemic is far from over, noting that the global economy has experienced an estimated loss of $22 trillion and new variants are compounding explosive outbreaks. He also called on world leaders to support a massive push to vaccinate at least 10% of the population of every country by September and 30% by the end of the year.
The theme of this assembly is, as you know, ending this pandemic, preventing the next one. The reality is we still have a lot of work to do to end this pandemic. We're very encouraged that cases and deaths are continuing to decline globally. But it would be a monumental error for any country to think the danger has passed. The tailored and consistent use of public health measures in combination with equitable vaccination remains the way out. I urge all member states to commit to supporting the targets I set out on Monday to achieve vaccination of at least 10% of the population of all countries by the end of September and at least 30% by the end of the year. One day,
you can now have more babies, just one in addition to two already allowed. Well, that's the comment coming from the Chinese government, marking the end of a strict two-child policy. The change has been approved by the president. It comes after a census published every 10 years showed that China's population grew at its slowest pace in decades. This added pressure on Beijing to boost measures for couples to have more babies and avert a population decline. Shrinking populations are problematic owing to the inverted age structure, with more old people than young. Census reports released earlier this month showed that around 12 million babies were born just last year. The figure is a significant decrease from the 18 million in 2016 and the lowest number of births recorded since the 1960s. The South African power utility Eskom has implemented scheduled power cuts due to high demand and breakdowns of generation units. Eskom is in a statement on Monday said the power cuts, which began today, will be in effect until Tuesday morning. The power cuts began at 1400 GMT and are expected to last until 0300 GMT on Tuesday, with the possibility that it could be extended. For more on the business news, Tululope has it all.
Welcome to Business on NC Continental Prime. I'm Tolulokwe Adeleru Balogun. Zimbabwe's Mines Minister Winston Chitando has informed Total Mining Limited, a venture controlled by Eurasian Resources Group, that its platinum mining concessions could be seized because no progress has been made in developing them. The Bokai and Kinonde concessions owned by Total Mining Limited may be taken over under the use it or lose it principle, which allows the state to repossess idle mining claims. Zimbabwe, which has the world's third biggest platinum group metal reserves, has struggled to develop its mining potential, with investors from Russia, Cyprus, Nigeria, and Kazakhstan yet to bring projects into production. The Eurasian Resources Group has not yet responded to the government's threat. According to data from the Bank of Ghana, Ghana's trade balance has narrowed in the first 4 months of 2021 to 1% of gross domestic products as imports continue to surge. The trade balance, which is the difference between exports and imports, stood at $759 million in April 2021. This time last year, the trade balance was $1 billion, equivalent to 1.3% of Ghana's GDP. Total exports were estimated at $5.13 billion in the first 4 months of this year, while total imports, including oil, stood at $4.37 billion. For exports, the country earned $1.8 billion from gold, $1.2 billion from cocoa, and $1.14 billion from oil. Oil witnessed growth in exports because of the increase in oil prices, which is hovering around that $65 mark on the international market. And there was some more good news for Ghana, as the gross international reserves hit $10.9 billion in April 2021, from $8.6 billion recorded in December of 2020. Kenya's lawmakers say that the country may be heading towards a default unless the government of President Uhuru Kenyatta revamps its debt. The East African country's debt servicing costs are poised to surge to a record 1.17 trillion shillings. That's about $11 billion in the year starting July the 1st. And this is according to a report released by the Parliamentary Budget Office. Calls to revamp the nation's rising debt are growing louder, even as it plans to borrow as much as $7.3 billion at the Eurobond market over the next 2 years. This prompted the International Monetary Fund to say that the country may be at the risk of debt distress. By 2024, it is expected that Kenya's debt servicing expenses will have more than doubled from 2020, with spending on development infrastructure remaining little changed. According to Kenya's public finance management rules, borrowing is restricted to funding for development projects. Central Bank Governor Patrick Njoroge says Kenya is seeking an extension to a 6-month debt servicing holiday that ends in June. And in April, Morocco's manufacturing industries, excluding petroleum refining, recorded a 0.6% price increase across board compared to March 2021. Morocco's High Commission for Planning published the latest data from its Industrial, Energy, and Mining Production Index. The index tracks the price variations of Morocco's various industries between April and May of this year. According to a briefing note on its index for April, the textile industry saw the highest price hike, recording a 3% growth compared to March, followed by Morocco's chemical industry, which saw a 2.5% growth for the same period. Morocco's various food industries, the metal products manufacture, except for machinery and equipment, information, equipment, and electronic products manufacture, and optical products industries all recorded a 0.5% price growth compared to March. And that's all on Business for NC Continental Prime. My name is Soludope Adeleru Balogun. It's back to Suleiman for more news.
Well, in sports tonight, a controversy about honoring tournament obligations has come to an end in the French Open. The player involved is saying, "I never wanted to be a distraction." What's that all about, Udoka? Well, tell us more.
All right, and in sports, we begin our coverage with tennis, where the world's second highest rated player,
Naomi Osaka has announced her withdrawal from the French Open following the controversy surrounding her refusal to speak to the media during the tournament. In a statement on Monday, Osaka said she never wanted to be a distraction to the event. And on Sunday, a joint statement from Grand Slam organizers said Osaka could face expulsion from the tournament. Now, the 23-year-old said last week that she would not do news conferences at Roland Garros to protect her mental health. And so talking about the French Open, Roger Federer marked his return to the Grand Slam arena in dazzling fashion with a 6-2, 6-4, 6-3 first-round defeat of qualifier Denis Istomin at the French Open. The 39-year-old Swiss had not played a Grand Slam since the 2020 Australian Open and had managed only one clay court match in the build-up to Roland Garros. Now, the Swiss, tied with Rafael Nadal on 20 Grand Slams, missed last year's French Open because of a knee injury and is appearing at Roland Garros for only the second time since 2015. Moving on from there, world number one Novak Djokovic said that he might consider skipping the Tokyo Olympics if the competitions are played without spectators. Foreign spectators have already been banned, and organizers are expected to make a decision next month on whether Japanese fans will be able to attend the games set to run between July 23 and August 8 and under what conditions. And lastly, talking about the Egyptian Football League now, the Egyptian powerhouse Zamalek have threatened to withdraw from the Egyptian Premier League if their rivals Al Ahly don't play their postponed games. 2020-2021 Egyptian Premier League season started in December 2020, which is an unusually late date considering that league campaigns tend to start in September. However, they were forced to do so because the previous season was suspended for over 4 months due to the Covid-19 outbreak. And the EFA's plan was to finish the current season by the end of the summer, and they have set September 30 as the final date if things don't go to plan. Now, Zamalek, who now sits on top of the league table with 6 games more than second place Al Ahly, say it is unfair for them to keep playing while their rivals keep getting their games postponed. And that's it on Sports Updates on News Central TV. I'm Udoka Njoko.
Well, many thanks, Udoka. Now we head to our weather desk for what to expect in terms of precipitation and sunshine across the beautiful continent tomorrow. And that's all on the news of this hour. But before we go, let's take a look at the headlines again. Southeasterners in Nigeria have complied with a sit-at-home order by the proscribed indigenous group of Biafrans. Elections have been held today in Somaliland for the first time in over 15 years. Finally, we told you that about 50 people have been killed following 2 separate attacks in the Democratic Republic of Congo's eastern region. Don't forget to follow us on social media. We're at News Central Television. You can also download our mobile app on iOS and Android. And you can also get to watch the News Central live in Star Times Channel 274, Avio TV, Channel 23. And we're live on YouTube and across all social platforms. See you there. I'm Sulaiman. Many thanks for watching.